Hey everybody, it's Lori with the Catch a Pocket podcast. And tonight, episode 29, I have artist Patrick De Gaulle. Patrick has a new opening right now for pieces called Trials of the Golden Rat. He's right now showing in Kansas City at Leedy-Voulkos Art Center. You can check him out until January up there. It might be a good day trip. Keep socially distant because artists are kind of socially distant people anyway. This is how they talk, and you don't have to talk when you're looking at art. So with that, you also have some of your best conversations looking at art. Well, with these COVID times, we really need to get out there and support the artists that are creating and contributing to us. Patrick's art is very thought-provoking and it's beautifully crafted. I would say it's top-notch nationally, if not even worldwide. So if you get a chance and you've never seen Patrick, please do. And if you've seen him, you know what I'm talking about. And with that, here's my interview with Patrick De Gaulle. Enjoy. I'm here with Patrick De Gaulle at the Fisch Haus doing a remote location Catch a Pocket podcast. And so basically, thanks for coming, or thanks for letting me come to you.
Exactly, yeah.
I'm used to just having people at my house.
Yeah.
It's harder to do lately. So thank you for having me. And
Absolutely.
Okay, we're just going to start from the beginning when you were born and kind of work our way.
Oh,
and
my.
I mean,
Okay.
You can be kind of fragmented when it comes to your early days or whatever, but
Okay.
But we'd like to get to the point where we're going to talk about something of inspiration to you.
Okay.
Okay?
All right. That sounds fun.
Okay.
Well, so I was born in upstate New York, New Hartford, New York, which was I close to Utica, New York. My mom and dad grew up in Watertown, New York, which is way upstate. And in fact, my fraternal grandfather, my dad's dad, served in World War II with Jimmy Stewart up in Fort Drum.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, he was a bombardier, and Jimmy Stewart was his, I think, his squadron commander.
Okay.
I mean, these are memories of my grandfather died years and years ago, but my dad talked about it a little bit here and there. But Fort Drum is in the past was where they used to do Siberia training because the snow was. The snow drifts got up to... Because you're basically
in Canada even then, right?
Yeah.
And you're way up there.
The snow was amazing. I remember when I was a kid, my grandfather, that same grandfather, actually had a heart attack. And we drove up to... And we lived in Utica, which was, I think, 2-3 hours away from Watertown. And we drove up to just be with the family and stuff. And basically what had happened was he was trying to keep up with the snow, shoveling his front his front sidewalk, had the heart attack. When we got up there, the snow drifts were well over 12 feet. And I remember being in our little station wagon, or huge station wagon, actually.
Right.
Wood paneled, 70s station wagon. And we were driving and you couldn't see, it was like tunnels of snow.
Wow.
It was amazing. I remember that I mean, it was terrible. My grandfather had the heart attack. He lived after that. But for us kids, I mean, we were young. We had a blast, in the snow. We didn't quite get what was going on, but
Sure.
But I remember my brother and I jumping out of the attic windows into the snow on the, from the the third, fourth floor,
And be able to go in there and like tunnel your way out.
Yeah,
Or
it was I mean,
wow.
Thank God we didn't hit any fences or anything. I mean,
Yeah,
we were pretty stupid, but
Kids will
so
be kids.
yeah, exactly. But I don't think that sort of snowfall happens anymore up in New York.
Not like that.
It's changed.
Huh.
But yeah, I remember that distinctly as a kid. It was.
And how old was that about?
I was probably between 7 and 10 at that time.
And how long did you live in New York?
So, like I said, my parents grew up there, so all my family was from Watertown and Syracuse and Ithaca and all that up there. And then, but my dad got a job with NCR. He used to work for General Electric in Utica. And then he got the job in South Carolina. So we moved from upstate New York to Irmo, South Carolina.
The Yankees are in town, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Poor
So
guy.
it was a huge culture shock. I was 11 at the time. And that was the year that Star Wars came out.
Oh, nice.
So I got
At
to
least
see
you had
Star.
that.
Yeah, it was weird. I was sad to leave all my friends and everything, and I didn't. The landscape is so different. Upstate New York is just gorgeous with deciduous
Farmland
trees and
that kind of thing.
yeah,
Hills and
like the
big
fall.
ski.
Yeah, exactly, and snow.
Right.
And for a kid, snow was amazing. That kind
Right.
of snow was amazing.
Totally. Sled and play.
Build forts and
Yeah.
which was probably my first start architecture.
Sure.
Dive into architecture because I actually have my degree in architecture.
Oh, okay.
We can talk about that later,
Sure.
but I'm pretty sure that's how it all kind of started, building rooms out of snow and
Sure. And putting them in blocks or whatever.
Exactly.
And then making actual igloos and
yeah,
stuff like that.
yeah,
That's
exactly
cool.
right.
So,
And
okay. And so you're in now.
now we're in South Carolina.
South Carolina. What part?
So Irmo was close to Columbia, kind of
Okay.
sort of in the center, inland. What was nice about South Carolina was it was equally close to the ocean as it was to the mountains. So 3 hours either way from where we lived, we could go camping up in either spot.
Right.
So, and the ocean
Did
was
you go
great.
to Myrtle Beach?
Myrtle Beach, Hilton Head Island,
Okay.
Mostly Hunting Island was where we
That's
camped
where
a
you
lot.
liked.
Yeah, my
for your
parents
family.
love that.
Yeah.
So, so that was I'd seen the ocean up in Massachusetts when I was a kid when I lived up
Right.
north, but that was probably my first.
Like beachy kind of thing. Because up there it's colder.
Oh yeah, you're not
you're-
jumping in the water.
No. And there's sharks on the whole thing at some point. But I've been to Myrtle and a few of the Hilton Head and those, and it's pretty. It's like Florida pretty,
Yeah, we would even go. We'd go in the winter where we'd get a cabin. You could rent cabins on the beach. And I think we did one Christmas there one year.
Nice.
It was amazing.
Because
Yeah,
it's
walking the beach.
cheaper and it's like off season.
Yeah, nobody's
costs.
there,
Yeah.
and
I think we did that one time for like Thanksgiving. We went to Myrtle Beach and rented the whole penthouse of a hotel. And then
oh, you know what? I just
it was
remembered.
really fun.
So your husband,
Uh-huh.
Phil, his sister Jenny.
Yeah.
So I first met her when I moved I was at school at K-State. So I'm jumping around here a little bit, but
okay.
I just got my degree in architecture and I started work in Wichita and I moved into those little apartments on Oakland Street.
Oh yeah.
And I was in the pink building and Jenny
That's a cool
lived,
building.
and
Yeah.
she lived above me. So when I first moved in, I think I'd been in there maybe a day, maybe two. And I remember sitting on the front steps, the power was out, and Jenny had just come home from work. I think she worked at the mall at the time, you know, and I'm like 23 maybe.
And you're doing your degree? Or
and I'd already done, it was a 5-year program at K-State.
Okay.
Architecture. And then, and I started working at a firm that worked on mostly Pizza Hut stuff. And it was just really good money, and basically it was mostly architecture. So I didn't study art. I studied architecture.
Okay.
But I always knew I wanted to be a painter, an artist. So my plan was to make as much money in this little amount of time as possible, pay off whatever debts I had, and then just quit and then just paint. And in the meantime, I would, you know, and I started at that time, you know, Kent and Eric and I were, so Eric Schmidt and Kent Williams, my partners here at Fisch Haus, along with John Arnett, we started playing around with you know, these sort of hit and run projects, hit and run shows. So, but this was a little bit, that was after this. So anyway, to finish that story, so I'm sitting on the front steps of the Pink building there, and Jenny comes home from work and the power's out, and we just start talking. And she's like, well, do you want to come up for, I think, you know, you want to come up for a drink or something? I'm like, yeah. And we had a candle going, and we started talking about South Carolina. I mean, like, where did you live? And they were from Irmo too. Like, in fact, I think, or no, not them. They're somebody in their family that their aunt, or I can't remember now. It's been so long. But suddenly we had this connection, and I remember pulling out my old high school yearbook from Irmo before I'd moved to Wichita when I was, you know, I think she had an aunt or Phil and Jenny had an aunt who taught at Irmo. Oh, wow. And so her picture was in my yearbook.
Holy cow.
Yeah, exactly. And so
small world, right?
Yeah, small world. And then, you know, she invited me out, and that's how I met Phil and the whole crew. And that's how I kind of got.
Phil is such your greatest supporter. We have a newer house, and it has a whole wall of your art. But yeah, so he calls you Patrick.
Oh yeah, and he calls me that because that night when Jennifer invited me out to the bar, it was the Spot, and that's, you know, so Spot. We were all hanging out, and she introduced me to everybody, Kate Mix, and all the everybody, and Justin, and you know, and so, and I told this story. In college, a couple buddies of mine and I went to New York City, and we were doing the tourist thing, and we had a friend that worked, and the friend that we crashed on his floor in this tiny apartment. He actually was an architect that worked in the Plaza Hotel on the top floor. There was an architect. It's so weird to think about it now, but at the time, I mean, this was 30 years ago. At the time, there was an office up there, and he and Doug worked up there. And so one day we were out wandering around, and we decided to go visit him at his office. Our friend. We go into the lobby of the Plaza Hotel, and we're just going to hit the elevators and go up to our friend's office. And I look over, and I see the hair and the brown leisure suit, and I'm like, holy crap, that's James Brown. And my friends are all like, no, it's not. I'm like, seriously. And we had been playing this game where, because we were in New York, we would see somebody and go, oh, there's Phil Collins, and it was just some bald dude, you know.
Totally. I would totally do that,
you know, and we were just goofing around. But this time I'm like, no, that's James Brown. I swear to God. So these guys are giving me a hard time. And so then I'm like, well, screw you guys. So I go up to the desk, front desk, and I grab a pen. And I have a notebook. Oh no, I had a flyer. I have this piece of paper. I have proof.
That's great.
So I go up, and James Brown is talking to a woman who's just obviously boring him, and he's not paying that much attention. He's got this huge mountain of a guy behind him who's his bodyguard, right? And he's talking about some story, and I interrupt him. I'm like, Mr. Brown, can I please have your autograph? He's like, sure enough. So then he turns around and meanwhile he's interjecting. This woman is now talking to the bodyguard and I don't know what she's talking about, but he kept interjecting like, yeah, and I got one of them for my wife too, while he's writing, right? So he's kind of half with me and half with the woman.
Yeah.
And so he has my pen upside down in his hand.
Oh my goodness.
Because I handed it to him the wrong way.
Right.
And he's not paying attention. I'm a fly right here.
Right.
So he's writing this and I'm like, holy crap, I'm not going to get his signature because it's the wrong way up. So I literally took the pen out of his hand and put it back in and he didn't even notice.
And he finished?
And he finished the thing and he wrote, and then he dismissed me,
Sure.
And then, so I have the thing and it says, it's to Patrick.
Patrick.
Rocky 1-1-1-1, and he was doing Rocky 4 at the time.
Yeah.
And he misspelled my name, which, whatever, but it's Patrick. And I just thought, that is awesome.
Yeah.
I am Patrick now.
I am Patrick.
And I told that story with all the guys. Yeah. And so they all, and you can tell that group, because they'll all call me Patrick.
If you're a member of that group.
Exactly.
Okay.
They still do to this day.
It's true. I said I get to interview Patrick, and he said Patrick.
Exactly.
First thing out of his mouth.
We moved from South Carolina to Wichita when I was my senior year in high school. So.
Oh wow.
So I kind of reinvented myself several times. When you move, you can kind of start over. You know. So
as a young person, especially,
Yeah. So I think I was into comic books and kind of nerdy and chubby and we moved to Wichita and I dropped a bunch of weight and realized that I really wanted to hang out with girls and so I couldn't talk about comic books anymore, and I met Eric, who's been my partner at Fisch Haus in school, and I got on the yearbook staff and I would do a lot of the illustrations or do a lot of the layouts and stuff, and I got to know everybody coming in fresh out of from nowhere, your last year of school. Everybody else is kind of grown up together and you're
and that's
I managed
you met Eric at school.
And
what
I
school
managed
was that?
Capon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, we were Catholic, and so my dad got me into Capon. And I remember living here because Dad moved me here by myself. My senior year, I was 16. I was a year younger than everybody because I have an October birthday, so they could choose to either put me in late or early, and they put me in early. And I think, frankly, that always kind of held me back. Like I was always proud of the fact that I was
smart
younger,
enough to keep up with the
but I think emotionally or maturity wise, I wasn't in the same level, so I was always kind of a beat behind everybody,
right? Sure.
And so I think that kind of helped to make my life slightly miserable growing up and as a kid,
more miserable than being a regular teenager.
Exactly. And so met Eric, met a lot of the guys, my friends that I still kind of keep in touch with from Capon in high school.
That's kind of cool.
Not a ton, just because again I didn't grow up with any of those guys, but I got to know them just because I was on the yearbook staff, and there was a good crew, and we spent a lot of time together. And I think working there and Eric was a photographer. I remember that.
And that's Eric Schmidt. He's such a nice person.
Oh yeah. He's super smart, really gifted. He's working on all kinds of amazing things right now.
I believe it.
Lots of patents, and he's
an inventor. He really is too. His mind is constantly on
the sound hole. Do you still have a sound hole?
Yeah, we have all sound holes now. We're like sound hole full.
Working at yearbook and in the yearbook staff, I think hanging out with them a lot of the day versus just going to a class all the time, I think that prepared me for architecture school. I mean, it kind of, I understood how a studio worked, right?
Right.
And in architecture school. So Eric actually was the one that I think he and I went up to K-State's open house for architecture in the architecture program, and it was amazing,
Right.
And I was still thinking I wanted to be an artist, and my dad was like, "Oh, you got to do something practical, know," and being a young sort of creative person, I was like, oh, stay true to my, but then when I went to the open house, and I'd had this interest in architecture already, but when I went to the open house, I saw there was structure. There was also, and structure, I mean it in many, many definitions, but
good clean spaces, the
people
that know that kind of thing.
Like the whole experience was the structure of the experience was intriguing to me, and seeing the renderings of these buildings that had not been built yet, and the imaginations that were going on here. I was really impressed, and so I did architecture, and I loved it. I mean, I knew I wasn't going to be an architect, throughout this. I mean, that I wanted to end up being an artist, but it's amazing how much it has informed my work. I understand how things go together. My work is, I'm painting on sheetrock and building my own frames, and and one of the most important things that I think I learned from architecture school, studying, for example, Frank Lloyd Wright, what I loved about Frank Lloyd Wright's design, and there were some faults, obviously, but there's some funny stories about him, but he thought about everything. He thought about the light switches that are built in. He thought about, the artwork that hung on the walls. He thought about the clothing, he would design a gown that the person, the hostess, the homeowner would wear if she's being a hostess at a party in his place. So he wanted, and maybe that's a control freak thing, and I know I am. Sure. Yeah. But I just love that idea that somebody thought of everything. When you walk into a space, sight, sounds, all the sensations are taken into consideration. And I just thought that was fascinating.
Yeah, that is.
And I've tried to translate that through all of my exhibitions. So, art doesn't stop at the canvas. Right. It goes, you have to think about the presentation, the framing, the lighting that's on the framing, the walls that the pieces are going on. So these light boxes that I'm building, so these are awesome. Large scale drawings that I've blown up on and printed onto acrylic panels, and they're translucent with drawing printed behind, but it looks like it's on top. I mean, it's meant to be visual on top, and then built these light boxes with LEDs behind it. And one of the things that I don't like seeing cords generally, where you see, and I didn't want it to be batteries, you have to then take it, put batteries in, but I wanted the piece to be kind of floating on the wall. Well, I have to have a cord, right? So instead of having an orange extension cord or a black plastic cord coming from this thing, I found this old retro cloth covered,
cordage
cord that you might see on an old iron or an old heat lamp or something from and there's several companies that make the versions of that are brand new. It's brand new, but it's and they're beautiful. Like they have patterns, houndstooth patterns or stripe patterns. And so I gave each one of these boxes 25 feet of cord, because I don't want there to have to be an extension cord, because you never know where your outlet's going to be, right? And so even the plug that is a vintage plug, a retro vintage plug, And because so I've made the cord an integral part of the piece,
that's
rather
cool.
than because otherwise you'd just be looking at a crappy plastic cord, and it's definitely visible, know. I'm always amazed at when people, when you go into people's houses, they might have a beautifully painted wall, and right in the middle of the wall is this crappy plastic thermostat or a junky outlet cover that's taupe colored,
Right.
Why don't we think about these things?
Yeah, why can't you make that look like a work of art too?
Yeah, it's
just a
color, it blends in, or it disappears. So anyway, so my shows, I try to consider, in fact, the old Fisch Haus shows were so influenced by this idea. Like I remember we would, a lot of times you have an opening and you have a table full of, chips and,
Foods,
food, 2-liter bottles of pop.
Yeah, sometimes.
And it looks like crap.
Yeah, always.
And within an hour it's decimate,
yeah.
And so we decided, okay, our first art show, the first Fisch Haus show, we called it the Fish Shows at that time. We didn't have Fisch Haus at that time, but was in Old Town before Old Town was Old Town.
Right.
And we went into an old warehouse. We paid, I think it was Sheldon Kamen. We paid him $50 for the night. It was a Friday night. And he gave us the key like a day before, and we cleaned as well as we could in a day, hung everything.
One day,
and then we had a crew, we had friends that came and helped, and this was our very first show, and we, there weren't special lights or anything, so we had to kind of create these lights. I think we ended up, this is terrible, but I think we ended up buying a bunch of lights from Walmart and then save the receipts, it's terrible. But anyway, we hung as many lights as we could, and but the food, we just duct taped boxes of classic cereals to the columns that were in the space.
Oh, wow.
And that was our food, and people would just reach. This was before COVID, right?
Yeah,
and you could reach into the box and just. So here are these people in suits, like, eating, or different. Yeah, it was amazing. And so ever since then, we decided, okay, the food is part of the show.
Right.
And so that became, and then there was music, and then we would have, theater elements and music elements, like Rayfield played at one of our shows, or a couple of our shows. And we had Eddie Martinez. He was living in Wichita, and we met him through a mutual friend, and I think John Boldenau actually brought him over, and Dan Rouser. Anyway, we decided to see if he wanted to do a dance routine at one of our shows.
Right.
And so we set up a kind of a sort of a stage all the way. At that time, I think it was in the old Fisch Haus, which is just north of here.
Right.
The Diver Studio now, that's John Ernat's place, John and Connie Ernat's place, but that was the original Fisch Haus.
Right. Okay.
And I think, if I'm remembering correctly, it was, there was nothing in the space. So you could look from when you walked into the space all the way to the back. Yeah, exactly. And we lit Eddie on this stage all the way out on the gravel train track, or around there. And he had a wedding dress on and did this amazing dance.
Right.
And I think, he tells that he comes back to Wichita every once in a while, and we hung out a couple Thanksgivings ago, and he was saying how that he had so much fun at that thing, and he was so inspired, because I think he was a little bit bummed out to be back in Wichita. I think he had to come back for family reasons or something or other. Proud of him.
That kind of inspired him to move forward and keep going with his career and not give up.
It's amazing how many wonderful creative people are from or live in Wichita.
I think so too.
Yeah, and
I'm trying to capture it all as much as I can. As much as anyone will allow me to.
Absolutely.
That's what I'm just like. I'm gonna keep doing it until I die or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's amazing. I think there needs to be more documentation of it.
I think so too, especially during this time, because today we're taping this on Halloween.
Yeah.
And a pivotal, like, how many days? 4 days before we vote. I mean, the very last
Oh
day
my
to
gosh,
vote.
yeah.
So, I mean, this is a really tumultuous time for America.
I saw you voted already, right?
Yes, sir, I did.
Me too. Mm-hmm. Yeah, mail-in ballot, but I walked it over to the, up the street. That the arena is
Interest Bank Arena. They're
Yep.
doing it, and Phil and I, we drove to that the city building at the courthouse.
Yeah, that's where I
And
usually
dropped
have voted in the past, but yeah, it's crazy time.
Crazy time. Hopefully it works out for us.
Yeah.
Anyway, so your first show's here at the Fisch Haus. Do you want to kind of talk about still when you graduated from K-State in architecture? Is that where you met Elizabeth?
No. So I met Eric in high school, and I knew John. John also went to Capon, and I met John. I knew his brother. Mm-hmm. I met him after school when I moved back to Wichita, when I lived on Oakland and all that. And then I met Kent. He and I went to school together at K-State. So I met Kent at K-State, and he was in my class at in architecture school. So we collaborated a lot. So we were already kind of working together all throughout school, and Eric was too, but Eric switched. But anyway, but Elizabeth came much later. So Elizabeth was in town, and she actually started dating Kent.
Okay.
And then they kind of remained friends, and then I just kept running into Elizabeth. She's a swimmer, so I would run into her at the Y. I'm also a swimmer, so and we just polite chatting at first, and we realized we were just we would spend an hour at the on one end of the lane,
right,
just chatting, and then I'd be like, oh, okay, well, I guess we
didn't work out at all.
Yeah, or whatever. And and we just started hanging out. It was really pretty nice. So Elizabeth came, so she's Canadian, and she studied architecture at McGill in Montreal.
Okay.
And which is where Moshe Safdie comes from.
Oh, okay.
And Moshe Safdie, of course, did our exploration place, which coincidentally was, so Elizabeth moved to Wichita, and you'll have to interview her on that because it is a long story, but it's an amazing story.
Okay.
And somehow she was traveling all over the world, never thought about coming to the U.S. And then somehow through a weird series of events found herself in Wichita, Kansas, broke, wandering around, and saw the huge rendering of the building that was going to be Exploration Place.
Right.
And she's like, holy crap, that's Moshe Safdie. And of course, she's super familiar with Moshe Safdie. So she found the architect that was, the architecture firm that was sort of the in-town facilitator, so to speak.
Is that
Schaefer Johnson Cox and Fry? Exactly right. And so she got a job there and started. So that's how she came to Wichita and what she was doing here.
Okay.
And so this was years ago, and she basically, when we decided that we needed to be together, I mean, it was amazing. She just moved in and
like all at once, bam.
It was absolutely no question there, which was really strange for me. I'd never given any thought to having anybody in my space, but that worked out. That was just kind of a natural progression, and then I was basically, we just started working together on various projects, and but yeah, that's how we kind of. That's how she got, and so the year we met, the year we decided to be together, she took me to Montreal, and we drove my Diesel Rabbit pickup, which was like a go-kart.
Yeah.
And we
drove it all the way to Canada.
Drove it all the way to Canada.
Whoa.
And I think
Did it make it?
It totally made it. Well, we had to, luckily, I had to get AAA, basically. We realized that.
Before we go, let's get AAA.
And we used the hell out of AAA because we had to get towed several times. We figured as long as we can make it 100 miles here, I mean, they'll tow you within 100 miles of someplace, And we definitely used that, availed ourselves of that service. And so we packed our bikes, my drawing, my art tools, tools, and clothes.
What you could fit in the back of that pickup.
Yeah, and then just drove to Montreal, and we were there for several months, and we were staying with friends, and then we've just been going back every year.
Are you guys dual citizens?
She is a dual citizen. Her mother was American and her dad's Canadian.
Okay.
And so she has dual citizenship.
I was just wondering, were you able to go this year?
No.
Aww.
If she wanted to go, she could have.
Because she has citizenship.
She has citizenship there. She was born there. But me, I couldn't go. But we go normally every year. This year was it was a wash.
It's a special year.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe next year you can drive if they let Americans in.
I
don't blame them for not, though.
No, me neither.
I really don't, because we're just being jerks.
Yeah, I agree.
Plain and simple.
I agree.
And as a matter of fact, I have a couple of friends there. I want to say it's Montreal, but it's probably not. Is that in the Northwest? Montreal?
It's let's see, it's 6 hours. Is it 6 or 9 hours from New York City? I think it's 6 hours.
So it's on the east.
It's on the east. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's on the St. Lawrence River.
Okay, so these buddies, they live on the opposite side over there right by Washington State.
Oh, Vancouver.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Montreal.
It's lovely there.
So when we were visiting my relatives up in upstate New York, it's from where I grew up is about 3 hours from Montreal. So Elizabeth and I kind of grew up in the same, within a
region,
3 hour region.
That's
of each
really,
other.
that's
Didn't know each other. I mean, we met in Wichita, Kansas, of all places, but
so crazy.
Yeah.
So, okay, what do you want to tell me about when you guys decided to buy this second Fisch Haus? Like, what all happened to make that deal go down?
We were renting up the street, the 424 Commerce, which is now the Diver Studio, and John and Bob Finn, John, who was the owner at that time, who rented it to us, approached us with a deal. If we wanted to buy it, he would rig it up for us to buy. Okay. Which was really, really cool. I think we were
John or Nat?
John Finn.
John Finn.
Well, okay. John or Nat was in that deal, but yeah, is that what you're asking?
Yeah. Well,
so it was John and I, basically. John or Nat and I, and then John Finn is the guy that owned the buildings.
Previously owners.
Yeah. So they owned a bunch of they owned a distributorship which distributed, appliances or whatever, and they owned all these warehouses. And down here there was really nobody living. I mean, a few stragglers. I think there was a guy named Eric who lived in a couple. Doug. Anyway, those guys lived up there. I think they had an electronics business kind of thing. But
yeah, because it was kind of like the train tracks are right behind you guys, and this was storage. This would have been like, here's where all the sugar in town went.
Broom corn. It was a broom corn storage facility. These were built, if my understanding is correct, these were all built to store broom corn. I guess Wichita was the broom corn capital of the world at one time, I guess, if my history is correct.
What the hell is broom corn?
I think it's like what you make brooms from is what I thought. Maybe it's, I mean, we still find like straw like stuff in the
like the real
between
cool,
the joists and stuff.
Brooms.
I think so.
School stuff.
That's my guess. I don't know 100%.
So maybe they had like a little broom corn factory here And they were getting the raw materials on the train and then whatever. And there's a shipping dock out front.
And the
so
front, the front was the back and the back was the front because they would unload because it used to, the train tracks are on the back side now, and they would, on the, let's see, that's the east side now. And they would pull up and just load in and load out. And the front, that was actually the back, and the trucks would, so it was the opposite.
Interesting.
But now,
totally different than what my mind had.
Yeah, because the roof of the building actually slopes to the front. That is now, which would be the opposite normally.
Okay.
So he owned several of the buildings down here, but he was like, I'll just sell you this, and then you just pay me the mortgage payments, and I'll carry the note, whatever. Because no bank would loan us money. We have no money, Right. I mean, I was doing construction work to make, as long as I made I think at the time I needed $600 a month to keep things going.
So you would do what you needed to make that
frame pictures and I helped Eric Schmidt and I would build decks, and we would, do stuff like that. And I also was a stagehand out at Century 2 a lot, and with Chris Mullen, who was our lighting guy for years and
nice.
Tech guy. Anyway, so we were going to buy that building, and then something happened where John Finn, the owner of the building, he got this deal from, I guess it was U.S. Supply who owned it at that time, but it's the Fisch Haus and then 3 of the buildings that were north of here, and then a parking lot, and then John Finn's building came after that, and then the old Fisch Haus, right? So he wanted that parking lot on the side, and he didn't own it, but he wanted to buy that, and they wouldn't sell it to him unless he bought all of these buildings. So then he came back around to us and said, tell you what, I'm going to sell you for the same price as I was going to sell you that building. I'm going to sell you this one instead. And we were like, I don't know. And then we came over here. We actually broke in because,
there was no one here. It was totally vacant.
It was vacant. I mean, there were pigeons living in here, right? Yeah. So we broke in the back and we walked around, and it was amazing. It was huge. It was almost twice the size.
Yeah, because Diver's very small. It's not
very
small.
It's still big, but it
has this coziness that.
I think Diver is about 11,000 square feet maybe total, and this one is like 21,000 square feet. So 3 floors. Yeah. And anyway, so we were like, hell yeah, So, and we were super excited, but suddenly we were under a time crunch. Like we needed to complete the deal after a certain. I didn't have the down payment. Right. And this was my chance, So I needed to come up with, a chunk of money that I just didn't have, and I ended up selling my car.
Was it that same diesel Rabbit pickup truck?
No, this was before that. So this was the diesel came after. This was when I was working out when I was working in the firm. This was I had quit my job and I was doing art full time, but I had my old car, which it was a Volkswagen Jetta that I was able to afford because I had a halfway decent job before.
Like a classy job.
A paying job, yes. So anyway, I had this car, so I ended up selling that car and this banker was great, Jim Bunk, some small bank, said he would give me the loan, and it could be I could turn it around as soon as I was able to pay it off. He helped me out a lot. Right. So I had the chunk to do the down payment, and then we bought the building, and basically it was the same. I had to come up with the same amount of money as I did in the old place while I was renting. And then and we bought the building. It was John and I and another guy, Philip Balmer. He ended up, he was a great furniture designer. Okay. And so he had the shop in the back. And anyway, for whatever reason, he wanted out. So we bought him out, and Eric and Kent bought in. I'm skipping some steps, but basically that's how, and we were showing together, and we ended up buying the building, and then we just kind of divvied up the spaces, and everybody got their own
areas
spaces,
and stuff.
we had shows, and
Yeah, great shows.
it was fun.
Boy, just taught me so much about art and everything, and they're just the highest quality. I feel like better than, or the same, at least equal level as anywhere in the country. You know?
Well, it's funny. It's kind of interesting because at the time, we were showing in hit and run places, like I said, where we would go into an empty space, give somebody some money, set up,
have 48 hours, and that's all you
have.
Exactly,
and people would just swarm the place. It was this, big multimedia extravaganza, and then we'd empty it out, and it was an exhausting time.
Yeah.
But one year we went into the Wichita Community Theater.
Okay.
Which was the one in College Hill, right on Fountain Street.
Yeah, it's a neat little.
It was like an old synagogue, I think, at first, and then it was
a little church, is what it looks like.
Yeah.
Or a school building, like an old school building.
Yeah.
But it's a really old building that
Yeah.
has stained glasses and stuff.
Exactly,
like that.
and
They
then
do
now it's a
plays in it
theater.
now,
yeah, it's great, and it's
community plays.
Yeah, and it's right tucked in a neighborhood.
Oh yeah,
an old neighborhood, right? The College Hill. So we did the show in there, and at the time, this is how we met Chris Mullen. He was one of the lighting guys in that theater, and he would work nights and do lighting. So suddenly we're using he kind of introduced us to theatrical lighting, because that's all the lighting they had in there.
Okay.
So now we're using the lights that they have in the theater to light our work,
and it's so much better, right?
Oh my God! Like, we were using these 750 watt Fresnels or these Source 4s to which are these
focus.
You can focus. They have these barn door, they call them shutters, barn doors that you can and you can actually box in a rectangular piece where no light is on
anywhere
anything,
just
on the piece.
Yeah, that's
right?
So cool.
And that became a signature sort of element of our shows, because
you use them still.
Well, these are we can get barn doors for these, but this is a newer track lighting system that in the old days, right, we would rent the lights, because obviously the theater had them already in there, but we would go to TSI, a local theatrical services place on Washington, and they were so awesome to us. They always cut us deals. Like, if it wasn't a busy weekend or whatever, we kind of square it with them months in advance and say, this is what we need. And they would rent us, half price sometimes, or
That's
just
nice.
pennies on the dollar.
People that support you,
Totally. And they loved coming to the shows too. So, and I remember one show in particular, Chris had somehow scored a huge, because we didn't have the amount of power that we needed when we came into this building at first, because this was just a warehouse. It didn't have the amount of, so we had to kind of, basically what had happened was
run extension cords from another building.
We kind of worked it out with the guy next door, who ended up being a complete jerk, and he decided to, like, once we had already rented the lights, had them on the dock, we were ready to install them, he comes over and says, I'm not going to help you.
Whoa.
Just a total jerk. And so now we're kind of screwed. And back then, we didn't have power accessible like we do right now. So, I mean, like, we didn't have outlets on the floor or all the things that we have now. So
I'm sure you've added boxes and things.
Oh, absolutely. All the electrical is done by us. But back then, right, we and I'm not talking about the main power that we were getting from the guy next door, but I'm talking about just getting the power to the actual instruments, right? We had to run, I'm not kidding, miles of cable, like huge black cable, all snaking it all through the joists in order to get each light its own power, right? And then, and then run it to a central box that then that's what we needed to get power from next door. So he screwed us. So then Eric had a friend that we went to high school with that worked at KG&E at the time, and he told us how to actually hook
straight
into the line outside.
Yeah,
so
basically, it's very dangerous.
It's super dangerous and stupid, but we were young and
he had like a timeline, and it was like up, right?
So he told us how to do it, and he said, "You didn't hear it from me."
Right, and don't kill yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the pieces of advice he said was, keep an eye on it. If it looks like it's glowing,
turn it off.
Shut it all down.
Yeah.
And so all night, one of us would, look outside and then we'd give everybody a thumbs up, like, okay, we're good. We're not on fire today.
Yeah.
But that was just nuts. But it's funny because people used to come into the shows and they would think, oh, these are backlit. How do you do it? And they'd look behind the piece to try to see where the light's coming. Because it didn't occur to them that light from the ceiling could be that concise, right? Which is funny because now I'm doing these light boxes where I'm actually going back to that. Yeah. And so I'm kind of creating the same sort of, the same situation.
Illusion.
Exactly, but with a light box instead of a source 4.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and that's just progression of your art, and you as a person, basically, it's kind of coming out and
super fun. Just how things just lead from one thing to the next, and how you learn. You go, like you. I mean, this is your first remote, right? Interview.
I have all the stuff that's in my normal, except for the computer's different, but other than that, it's the same thing that if we were sitting at my house right now.
Yeah. And so, it was kind of a pain in the butt, I'm sure, but now the next time
it works.
It's perfect.
Yeah,
that's, I ran into all kinds of trouble with these light boxes and had to redo them several times. But now, I wouldn't say I'm an expert, but I learned a lot.
You're pretty close right now, at least. These are awesome. I just want to talk about them so bad, but I know we're not there yet. So, so now, just talking about shows here at the Fisch Haus and how that's all come. How many years have you guys been here?
We bought this building in 1994.
Okay.
And before that, we were over at the old Fisch Haus, the diver studio today. We started renting that in 92. Okay. And when I got out of university and I moved into the pink building where I met up with Jenny.
Yeah.
So I worked at the firm for a couple years and then I got out, actually was laid off. But it was perfect timing. I was sick of being there.
Right.
And so it kind of forced my hand a little bit, which was a nudge out of the nest, I guess, as it were, the nest of making money. And so I didn't have any money and I had to move out of my apartment. And so I ended up, moving into at that time, that was just my studio, the old Fisch Haus. And I had the front room where Mike Harris's frame shop was. Yeah. He's now moved into another building on Douglas,
I didn't know that.
Very recently, last month, kind of. But that front room is where my studio was, and I ended up just moving straight into there.
Right.
So I put my bed in there, and I would shower at friends' houses. It
didn't have a shower in there?
No shower, no. I mean, there was a toilet and a sink, but that was it.
Yeah, you had running water.
We had running water.
So it's kind of camping.
Yeah, I mean, I could do a sink shower, but in the summer it got a little dodgy. But I was at the, I'd go to the Y a lot. Sure. And so, I swam every day. And so that was as much as I could. And then, but there were times when I'd be out, I'd either be working next door at the furniture shop or I'd be, working Century 2 or whatever. And, I'd go to a friend's house for dinner and I would have a towel and I'd say, do you mind if I hop in the shower?
Yeah. And they would kind of get it anyway, probably tell you no problem.
Yeah.
We've got good friends and stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally. They knew it already. And in fact, John, who still lived, at that time he was living in his apartment. I had a key to his place eventually where I would just go over to his place and shower whenever I needed it. And
that's cool.
And so, yeah.
So that's like, what? What are we talking about?
That's 92.
Are we on 30 years here then?
Probably.
Yeah.
Close to it.
Wow. And it's really kind of developed and changed and made itself into this kind of, to me, mecca of artists, where you have your group is solid, and they show here, well, when it's not COVID times and stuff.
Well, yeah.
And but even then, you're doing some things to I don't know, to promote art, your own art and other art.
Well, we evolved from being the original four, the founders of Fisch Haus, and having these big sort of the multimedia shows, the events, to then we branched out. Like, I think we were doing plays where we would, and when I say we were doing plays, we weren't the actors or the directors. We basically set up the chairs and made the stage and got the lighting and did the sound, but we invited in, the talented, actors and performers that we know, and we did some pretty amazing plays. We'd do theater in the round, where we'd set up a stage in the middle, or and then we were doing concerts,
Right.
Various,
and a lot of time you had your stage over here on your south wall.
This used to be where the dish was, that dish.
Right.
And we moved it over there, and now those walls actually flip around and become a flat wall, a flat surface for hanging art when there's not a show. So those are on wheels, and they can. And meanwhile, the backs of the walls are curved so that they echo the dish when they're open.
Oh, neato.
Which is really cool.
Yeah.
But
and that's Eric.
And
right?
that's Eric. Yeah, he designed it. He's the brainchild. That's his brainchild, rather.
Kind of guy.
Oh yeah, he's super into acoustics, obviously. But and it's kind of amazing when you get into that sweet spot when somebody's in the sort of, is it the apex of the dish, or the the center of the dish, where if you're there and you're or somebody's in there and then you're in the sweet spot, it's amazing. It sounds like it's
that's what everybody always says, is go sit where your head is kind of in the middle of the dish, and then have somebody come over here and stand, and you can whisper and they can hear you.
Totally. Yeah. It's
so cool.
It's funny how musicians either love it or hate it.
I bet.
Because it's kind of funky and it's
different.
Hard to, yeah, exactly. But then we kind of connected with Mark Foley and the Knob.
Right. I love
Knob
that
Fest.
stuff. Mark Foley and his jazz music, he's in the orchestra.
Yeah, but he's everywhere. I mean, he traveled with Kirk, and and he's
like the greatest bass player.
Yeah, he's
all of the land.
He's a tenured professor at WSU.
Yeah,
he teaches bass. He started the Knob Fest. The guy is all over the place.
Yeah.
And super solid. But and he and I have collaborated throughout the years too, where in fact, recently, Mark Foley and Dan Racer, I got together with them, and each one of them composed different, I'll say soundtracks. That's not pieces. They're not soundtracks, but pieces based on the work that I was doing at the last show, the large paintings.
Mm-hmm. And that was the one where you had the crucifix of yourself, sort of, in a way.
It was the innumerable anxieties and circus acts, but also, the idea was you have the 7 deadly sins and you have the heavenly virtues. These were the innumerable anxieties.
Oh, cool.
The anxiety, the endless
and they were
worries.
Humongous too, some of those.
9 by 9 on average. And so anyway, I had the show, and we started talking probably over beers, and they were like, well, let's do a thing. And we've done similar stuff in the past, but so I gave them all my writing and all the imagery, and then they came up with these amazing, and you can see them on my website, like the in the media area. There's a it's my lecture, and the lecture is bookended by Mark's piece and Dan's work. Yeah.
Cool. And I'll put the link on our page for that, so you can just click on that.
Yeah, and you can blast through my interview. My lecture. It's pretty long, and
If you're wanting to know about that, it's good to check out.
Sure.
So
Sure.
So okay, that was your last pieces, and they did also when you had your show. They did those pieces here, performed here.
Oh yeah, yeah. So
and stuff.
Yeah, they actually did do some of the elements from in a knob fest from the one they performed it at the Ulrich.
Okay.
And that's what they filmed. That's what they filmed during the.
So that's where the film is.
The lecture,
from.
yes,
Okay.
yeah. It's set. Everything was set up in the galleries at the Ulrich Museum.
Oh, cool.
And then, but they did I think both Dan and Mark played elements of their pieces in Knobfest. The subsequent Knob, the Knobfest that came after.
Okay.
But yeah. So Knobfest, just to explain.
Yeah.
Is our new music festival. We started it, I think it was right around 98. And we've been doing it pretty much every year ever since, and except obviously we're not doing it this year.
Everything's canceled.
Yeah. So, but it's a 3-day festival, Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights. And we've had, where it comes from, it's a new music festival, meaning that it's new compositions. Occasionally they'll play a composition by, say, John Cage or different things, but they'll be done in a sort of a new, fresh way. Occasionally they'll do a classic version of it ish, but for the most part these are music played by the composer usually. Wow. So it's brand new music. It's can be very challenging. It can be, one year we had, it was a stand-up bass and a saxophone, and neither one of them played their instruments the way you would normally play those instruments.
Oh,
so
really?
Like blowing on the mouthpiece of a sax and making these weird squeaking sounds, and then and it's like music for musicians.
Okay. Like
in a way.
Experimental,
exactly right.
Right.
But sometimes, most of the time it's amazing. Like it can be amazing. Like
there's some jazz
for somebody that's a novice or somebody that's not necessarily a musician that might not understand the little in jokes or whatever.
Exactly. Or like I hear music. I'm a novice musician. Like I like music.
But you live with a musician.
Right. And then they'll talk and I have no idea what they're talking about.
Right.
So I'm just like, Well,
I kind of feel like that in Knob. I've obviously gleaned a little bit of information throughout the years, but I'm there as a support. Like I've been on the board and cool. We do, the t-shirts and the image. But last year I kind of came up with the idea. And so we had a theme for last year.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'll explain that. But first, so Knob came about when a bunch of the guys that were involved, that are involved in Knob, went to the Bonk Festival in, I think it's Tampa, Florida.
Okay.
And so the Bonk Festival is basically Knob So Knob is Bonk spelled backwards. So Bonk came first. These guys came down, met a bunch of people. Then they invited them to come play in Wichita.
That's a good idea. It would fit
come to Wichita, and so
whatever.
they said, "Well, let's change. What are we going to call this thing? Oh, how about Knob?" And so that's where it comes from.
Okay.
But over the years, that's morphed into what does Knob mean this year? So every year, the imagery or the idea behind Knob is the 4 letters, but made like,
Differently.
Kinetic, nonsensical, obese, Baptist,
Right.
We come up with, and whatever those
That's the
4
theme.
words. Yeah. And it changes every year.
Okay.
And the imagery. So like right now I'm wearing Knob from last year.
Uh-huh.
and it is,
looks like a,
if I remember correctly,
like
the
a
Contemporary Norse Opera Bureau. And the T-shirt, and I designed this, and the T-shirt is kind of like an FBI symbol.
Yeah, it's like FBI meets operatic Vikings.
Yeah, so there's like a Viking helmet with wings. But what's funny is this Viking helmet with wings, the logo, I stole it from the Homeland Security symbol. I mean, I just based it off that. I turned the shield around to make the helmet.
Okay.
And I altered it, but I wanted it to appear very, very, like FBI-ish or whatever.
CIA, governmental.
Exactly. And the reason it's the Norse Opera Bureau is because, we wanted to do something that was really going to address the state of our society right now, right? And so Wagner is a very troubled artist in history because he was probably he was anti-Semite, first of all.
Yeah, okay.
He was notoriously anti-Semite. He was problematic as an artist. However, his music is everywhere.
Right.
The Flight of the Valkyries, he's another artist like Frank Lloyd Wright that we discussed earlier, where he thought of everything. Like his idea was, are you familiar with the Ring Cycle, which is where it's this big opera. It's like this 4-piece, 24-hour long program, right?
Wow.
Where it has dancing and costumes, and that's where the Viking woman, and she's singing, and the fat lady sings.
Yeah.
This is Wagner, right?
Okay.
Sure. And we grew up with cartoons have this music, Bugs Bunny. And one of the things that he thought about was not only, what are the costumes going to be, and what are the and the stage sets, but he had designed a theater, and the idea was his ultimate program would be, he would do the Ring Cycle. It'd be this 24 hours of opera, 4 rings, and
right.
The storyline is this evil troll who steals the gold rings from the Rhine maidens, and this is the great white knight, Siegfried, not knight, but
right.
Viking, the Aryan race, and all.
Right.
Hitler loved Wagner, for example, right? But Wagner was 100 years before, or a little less than that. Anyway, but
Isn't that where Tolkien get his?
They posit that exactly right.
Okay.
Yes, and so Wagner, his idea was he had a theater designed. He would do this program, and then he would blow the place up.
Oh, cool.
And that was the end. That was the end crescendo.
Awesome.
And I just thought, that is mad, but yet that's freaking cool.
Yeah.
I think even as an artist,
neither here nor there about the person that did that, but the idea.
Well, that's it, right?
Yeah.
And so, I don't necessarily want to have dinner with this guy, but I really, but this is the problem, right? You appreciate what he did. Star Wars basically is influenced by, the light motif, right?
At the very last inning is the Death Star blowing up.
The main thing is for the music, right? How each character has their own music. That's a leitmotif. So when Siegfried would come into play, he would have his own theme. Darth Vader, same. He would come into a room and it'd be dun 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 dun. That was his theme, and that's Wagner, right? And so anyway, we were talking about this, and we were saying, in the age of Trump and white supremacy and all this craziness, we should address this. And so we should let the artists for 3 days explore Wagner in their own way, whether they mock it or they laud it or whatever they want, right? But we discuss through music and art Wagner and the problems with how do you separate the art from the artist? How do you, this whole thing.
Sure.
And this is also in the age of, Bill Cosby, who I adored as a kid.
Me too.
And now I'm gutted. I am gutted.
Yeah, it's terrible.
I have to stop myself from quoting things that I've quoted my whole life, and now I'm like, can't do that now. So it's been a really terrible time for the arts, I would say. And so anyway, that was the idea. And
I agree.
We also decided, so we invited this artist group that I'd met in Kansas City called Paintalica to come in. They flew in from all over the country. A lot of them from, Paintalica.
Like Metallica with paint?
Yeah, Montana. They came. A lot of them came from Montana. I think somebody came from LA, and there was they were from all over. But we met in Kansas City, had a blast. They were in the gallery that I'm going to show in next month.
Okay, and that's
first Friday, November 6th at Leedy-Voulkos in the Crossroads in. Okay, I'm plugging now. Yeah, Crossroads, and also we're going to do a live webcam for people that don't want to drive or don't want to be in a public place. But we're going to try to take major precautions and stuff. So, all right.
Yeah, you did.
That's at Fish. So, and I was basically saying about the Knob Fest last year. Mm-hmm. So we invited Paintalica to come, and they kind of slept all over the place, and Picasso's Pizza loaded them up with pizza, which was freaking great. Kurt over there is awesome.
Good pizza too.
So at the end of the night, we would just get those big ginormouses and feed everybody, and I cooked a bunch too while they were here. And but they set up a couple of large walls and they just painted all night. So the idea was, we're going to do a production like the Ring Cycle that goes all night. So these guys, totally. I think Thursday night was just it's a slow, the soft opening, and we had 3 performances, 3 different acts or whatever, and they all kind of touched base on somebody wore a helmet that had wings on or a horn on it and did their piece, and somebody else had. There was I think a rock band did this opera thing where and that was amazing. And then there were dancers, and then starting on Saturday, how did we do that? I think we started on Friday night. Yeah, that's what it was. Friday night at 8:00, and we went all the way till Saturday at 10. So we did, 20.
Was it one piece or was it a lot of?
It was just all different acts, and meanwhile the painters painted all night long. There was somebody painting on the big mural all night long.
Wow!
And we have several movies on the website that show time lapse of the whole overnight cycle. Mm-hmm. And
is that on Fisch Haus?
Fisch Haus website.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And it was funny. We had to take turns staying up. I took the early morning shift. Elizabeth stayed up until 4 in the morning. I got up at 4 and stuck around until
Oh wow!
Just to kind of be available. But these guys, it was amazing, and it was probably one of the best Knob Fests.
It sounds good.
Yeah, it was great.
Man, that sounds good. I'm sad I missed it. I don't think I was able to come out. I don't know what we were doing then.
Yeah, Mark Foley did 6 hours of coding, which is just this way of he's doing computer code that translates into music, and it's just beautiful atmospheric thing, and he would just slow and he was just set up, and so people could come in any time in the night and just hang out.
Would they come?
Yeah, we had probably. I mean, there were times when it was just the artist and the musician and me or Elizabeth, and then somebody came in at 3 in the morning and hung out, and they brought some beer and just sat and watched and listened.
That's cool.
And, yeah, it was amazing.
Really cool.
Yeah.
All right, I think we're pretty much ready for your new show and your new pieces, and talk about that. If you want to.
Yeah, sure. Well, so I had just gotten done with the that show at the Ulrich Museum, which was a couple years ago, and it was those huge 9x9 paintings, and I was kind of burned out of doing such large work, and it was a blast while I was doing it, but I needed to work smaller. I needed something that I could do without having to enlist Elizabeth to help me move it around or haul it around. So I decided to go back to my roots of drawing, which is, I think I told you earlier, where I would just bring a stack of paper, back in the old Fisch Haus days where we didn't have heating or cooling. And if it was too hot or cold, I would go spend the day in the library or go to the Riverside Perk, and I would spend the day just doing these drawings. And these drawings, I would start these drawings with 5 lines, and I would use my non-dominant hand. Originally this was a game my mom used to play with me, right? So she would just draw 5 lines, scribble them on a page, hand me the page, and I would have to make something out of it.
Oh, cool.
It was a way to keep me busy. I always loved to draw. And so I decided, and what I like about this method of working is it's kind of like, and I mentioned this earlier to somebody else. So in French Canada, they have a meal called the Tuski. Okay. And a Tuski is a meal that you make when you look in your fridge and in your cupboards and you go, okay, I've got some old chicken, I've got some, or leftover chicken. Right. You don't want old chicken, but leftover chicken, you've got some noodles, you've got, some salad dressing. What am I going to make for dinner? And you whip up this meal based on what you have. And it's the best meal ever sometimes, And so sometimes it's not, but a lot of times
I do those.
It is, And so that's often the way I will work. Having a blank piece of paper is sometimes debilitating. Where do you go from a blank piece of paper? But when you have these self-imposed limitations, suddenly it gives you some borders to work with your creativity, that suddenly you can work within these borders. You don't have an open range, And for me, that I excel. I love that. I love that, the little bit. It's like Fisch Haus. Fisch Haus is a giant Tuski. All of our building materials we got either salvage, or I pulled it out of the trash. Or we, it's all junk that nobody, or somebody didn't want it, but it worked great for our purposes.
Right, and it turns into something beautiful.
Exactly.
That somebody really wants.
Sometimes. Or even just the architecture. Like if you go up in our house where Elizabeth and I live on the 3rd floor, like the whole kitchen probably cost me $500 to build. And the money came from having to buy new plumbing, because obviously I'm not going to use old pipes, But everything else, the lumber, the tile on the floors,
really
the
cool
marble countertops. It's all salvage. Even the light fixtures that hang over the countertops, I pulled out of the dumpster across the street because they threw them away. Exactly.
Or whatever. Yeah.
And so, to me, that is the best way to work, design, do art, whatever. So
I think so too.
So the lines are that. So I have these lines and I have this paper, and I would do these lines, and I would look at the, turn the page around, kind of see what they mean to me. And then I would draw from those. And I did hundreds of these drawings over the years, whether I was, like I said, at the library or at the cafe. So after my show at the Ulrich, I realized that I'd been doing these really large scale pictures. And before that, I was doing these really, detailed portraits of my friends, and very, very detailed renderings of my interiors, the interiors of our house, like those 28-foot long, interior pieces of our, panoramic of our living spaces and stuff. And a lot of these paintings take months to create, right? And so to go and sit down and do a drawing or two in a day is so exhilarating if you've not been doing that for a while.
Oh, I imagine.
And so I decided that's what I wanted to do. So I started doing these drawings recently, 2 years, like after my show, like I said. And I realized after like 10 of these drawings that they sort of had this common sort of theme, I guess, a narrative that was starting to evolve. And so I took that idea and sort of then I had a direction.
Okay.
And so the direction was the myth of the labors of Hercules.
Okay.
And in the myth, right, it's an ancient myth. It's attributed to the ancient Greeks, but it might be older than that. And it's basically the foundation of storytelling as we know it, this myth in particular. And so, and it's also the basis of our constellations that we know. It's like, so it's a very powerful story, very powerful myth. And I saw it as a way to contextualize what's happening today in our world, in our society. So what I've done is I've taken these 5-line drawings and done, there are 13 total images. I have 13 images because one's a diptych. So there are 12 labors, but there's one that's a 2-parter.
Okay.
And each one of them is referencing the original. So the myth is Hercules has to complete 12 tasks. And these tasks are to kill the Nemean lion, who is this terrible lion that's killing people, and he has to capture this thing and kill that thing. I mean, it's quite, so he's a hero in quotes, kind of, but, it's pretty dodgy stuff.
Right.
But anyway, in my story, the hero, again, and I'm using air quotes, is the golden rat. So he's and instead of the labors of Hercules, this myth has been told as the tasks of Hercules and the trials of Hercules.
Right.
So instead of the 12 labors of Hercules, I have the trials of the golden rat, which is the title of my exhibition. And you can guess who the golden rat is, and I'm addressing all of the issues surrounding that golden rat. And each one of them, I'm referencing not only each labor. I have a hydra.
Like the original labor.
Right. So like, for example, the original labor is he has to kill the hydra. And the hydra is this 9-headed serpent-like creature that you kill, you cut off one head, 2 more grow out. Right. It's classic. Right.
Yep.
And so in my version, it's a 9-headed baby thing. And the babies are all these white little babies, and they're all crying, and one of them the main one is holding a silver spoon. And the idea, I'm addressing white privilege and how we're, anyway, I don't want to get into it, but that's the idea behind it. And so each one of these, I address the hashtag #MeToo movement. I address the party system. I address sexual ambiguity or sexual orientation.
Right. Identity.
The military and how we use the military and how we treat our military, which is very poorly. So all of these things.
You had the media in there too.
And the media, exactly right. And so each one of these labors represents something that's happening today as well. So there's a kind of a monkey puzzle, this whole thing, where I had to use these 5 lines. I had to have it be somewhat cohesive as a group visually. So each one is kind of an animal-human hybrid.
Right.
It had to fit within the myth, but it also had to be contemporary, timely today.
Right.
And so it kind of broke my brain a little bit.
Yeah, well, it sounds like, like you were saying, Frank Lloyd Wright, or you thought about every piece of it to the degree that you were able to develop the concept and story and how you wanted to represent it.
Which is a blast. I love that part of it too. I mean, it's more than just a drawing, it's more than just, to me, it's fun to have this backstory. Now, you can walk into the show and what you'll see are 13 lithographic images.
Right.
These are all printed on, they're each one of these prints they have to go through the press between 2 and 3 times.
Right.
They're different. Each color, you have to pull it through the press. So these are sort of small-ish drawings that, and there's a limited edition version of, these. Yeah. And then there are these light boxes where I've blown up certain images to say another thing using these same images. And for example, the Cernian hind, capturing the hind, which is it's a female deer, a doe, that has golden antlers, and it's the fastest animal on earth, and Hercules has to capture it. Well, in my version, I do a male-ish version and a female-ish version. What's interesting is the female version has the horns, which generally doe do not have horns. So I just thought that was really interesting to have this sexually ambiguous figure, the figures. And so I've got them, they're 4 by 6 foot figures blown up on light boxes, and they're sort of running at each other. And then in the middle is a human heart with a crown over the top, and that's also a light box. And I'm sort of mimicking the old heraldry or the coat of arms that are family coat of arms. So I'm sort of addressing this as the new family coat of arms. The new heraldry is the name of the piece. So and that's my version of it. So you'll see these light boxes. What's funny is I decided to take these fly images. Yeah. And I blew up these fly images and printed them. I sent them to my printer that prints them on the acrylic. 2 days later, and my idea was they are symbols of decay, and also, rats kind of are also part of that imagery. And I thought I would sprinkle these fly images throughout the space just to kind of emphasize the idea of, this is a decaying society, I guess. I don't know. But and they're very loosely drawn flies, human, or house flies rather. Yeah. And anyway, I sent those images to the printers, and like the next day, the vice presidential debate happens, and Pence has a fly landing on his head, and now everybody's talking about
fly.
Exactly.
It wasn't like just the fly.
I could not have planned that any better. It was amazing.
Was really kind of eerily spooky in a way.
Yeah, seriously.
So
prescient.
It's all representative of your work, and I think it's top-notch level, and how you're kind of pushing the boundaries. And when you push the boundaries, a lot of times you run into the present and the future to get, and how they blend together. It's amazing. So this is the part of the show. So we've kind of went through your life here in Wichita and before, and this is the part of the show where I kind of ask everyone about inspiration and where they draw inspiration, or if they have a story of inspiration that they'd like to share with other people.
Well, I would say I get inspiration from all over the place. But one of the things that I really, I'm trying to think of the right word, treasured. So Elizabeth and I, we spent a lot of time together, obviously. And we're both, for example, we run together. We'll go out on these runs together. And in fact, when we're in Montreal, which I don't know if we said it, but I said it, but we spend from June 15th to October 15th every year there. So we're there for 4 months out of the year. So we're essentially living there in the summer.
Right.
And we spend our summers, or have spent our summers in the last, we spent our summers there for 20 years, except for this year. But the last, I would say 8 or 9 years, we've been running the marathon, the Montreal Marathon.
Cool.
And so that's kind of I have a studio up there, so I can work in my studio there, and I get a lot of work done there. Mm-hmm. And Elizabeth can work remotely on her architectural work, and her artwork as well. And so it's kind of perfect. We just move house, get out of the heat, and go there. Mm-hmm. And so, but we'll spend a lot of time outside. Montreal is amazing in the summers. and we just run. We'll just run for half a day, and
It's very temperate there.
Oh, it's amazing. And like in Wichita, I have about 2 routes that are nice, that, Riverside, and you go by the museum that are very pretty, and you're not going to be on the highway somewhere. You're not going to be in Montreal. There are 20 places, we every
it's lush.
It's and it's very temperate, and we have the mountain. We have the old port to go to, which is kind of the oldest. Montreal is one of the oldest cities in North America, so it's like this beautiful, cobblestone, so you can run down there, and so every morning we wake up and go, okay, where do you want to run today? Oh, let's do this North Stadium run, or let's do and so, and when we're on these runs, we just have the best discussions, right? I used to listen to podcasts when we would run,
right?
And then we just started doing these brainstorming sessions, and it is so inspirational. Like, she'll say something or tell me something she's working on, and suddenly we're off and running, and we're just going back and forth, and she's, I'm bouncing ideas off her, and vice versa. And so many, I mean, in a way, I would say she's more than just my partner in the classic sense of the word, between a man and a woman. But, I mean, so much of, the Hydra piece that I remember distinctly. We were running across the Jacques Cartier Bridge, and I was trying to come up with this concept, like, what's the Hydra going to be? How do I represent and we just started this bantering back and forth, and that's how I arrived at it. Without her, I don't know if I would have come up with that, but it's like this, I don't know how to explain it, but I'll say, well, what about this? And then she'll say, oh, well, that makes me think of this. And then I'll go, oh, now we're going over here. Now we're doing this. And we just have these, and it's funny. I feel like we should have a red phone, and anybody that has because we'll solve the world's problems on these runs. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
But I would say right now, and it has been like this for 20 years, that is, not only is it inspiring, but it's a blast. It makes being creative and just living so much fun. Like, we're at work all day, and all we're doing is just goofing around and
that's really cool.
Shooting the shit and just coming up with ideas, and that's everything to me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I really appreciate you being on the show and catching a pocket with me.
Absolutely.
And it's been my pleasure.
And I am honored to be involved.
Yeah.
And to be invited. This is great.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And is there any other plugs you want to put in at the last minute here, or any shout outs?
But do try to tune in if you can't make it to Kansas City. The show will be up till probably mid-January, and then I have to pack it up and probably send it to Chicago. So I've got a show.
Well, I will be on the lookout for that. I would enjoy a weekend in Kansas City just to get away.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they're doing their masks and all the things that I require
during the week or whatever.
Yeah.
You it's it's a huge space, and there are no more than 5 or 10 people in there at any one time.
Right.
So I think it's completely safe. And we're going to take all the precautions we can for the opening on coming up on the 6th of next month.
Oh, coming right up.
Yeah, a week from yesterday. So.
All right. Well, I hope you do just amazing. I'm sure you are, just from the look of things. Man, it's going to be awesome.
It's going to be fun.
Yeah.
A lot of work, though.
Everybody, go on up there or check it on the website. I will post it when I post this podcast. And everybody check out Patrick De Gaulle. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Lori.
Thank you. Thanks, Patrick, for being a part of the show. I really enjoyed it, man. It was a great conversation. At least to me it was. It was awesome. So anyway, he's going to be at the Leedy-Voulkos Art Center until January. I'll leave his links on this page, so just look below and you can find them. If you have any questions, you can email me at catchapocket@gmail.com. You can find us on Google, and you can find us on TuneIn and Spotify and Apple and all those things. And you can like us and share us and tell your friends. We'd really appreciate that. But once more, I would appreciate if you would wear your masks out in public, and that you would wash your hands and you would keep your distance, especially from me. It's gonna be a lonely winter, people, but we can do it together with some positive activities that don't transmit a deadly virus. Okay? Alright. So, with that, I hope you guys catch a pocket that you can be proud of. Nothing containing corona. Okay? Fun fact, Patrick created all the artwork for the covers of all of Kirk Rundstrom's albums, which is so cool. And Kirk Rundstrom is the person playing and writing the music, the intro and outro of this podcast. So, fun fact. See you next time.